I have no idea what music is playing, but I do know this is the Press Pros Monday Huddle, and I know I'm Bruce Hooley, and that's Sonny Folks, and we're happy to have you with us as we recap week 4 of the high school football season, and we get ready to hit the midpoint of the regular season, but not the whole season because we got a lot of teams that look playoff ready. Also, Ohio State, are they playoff worthy after their loss to Oregon? A big firing in college football. Could that usher Urban Meyer back into the college ranks? We'll talk about it all and be joined by our Mark Snyder at 10 minutes after the hour to talk about the Buckeyes. Good evening, Mr. Folks. How are you?
Good to see you, Bruce, and a busy weekend in sports. And, you bring up some very good discussion topics for tonight, not the least of which would be Clay Helton, because you and I were just talking before you hit the live button here. If you're going to fire your college football coach, when is the best time to do it? Right. If you lose your first game of the season and you fire him, you didn't know something, you couldn't see that coming. Anyway, that's a very unusual story because that guy's had some success in Southern California. The problem that reeks of not having success for the right administrator or the right administration.
I think what it is, Sonny, is he's had these instances in his career where he's put himself on the chopping block. Yeah. And then he always rallies. And right when they need him to lose a game and usher his way out of town, he wins. And now they're not going to give him the chance to do that. 2 losses. Sayonara, see you later. They're going to go with an interim coach. And I think if they'd waited 6 weeks, maybe they could get Urban Meyer to do his Bobby Petrino act and bail on his NFL team in the middle of the season. But we'll get to that. Let's start with our games in high school football, Western Ohio and Central Ohio. We did not. Did we have any upsets over in the MAC or in the TRC? Certainly not the game that I covered on Friday night. Troy Christian 44-0 over Covington. You had Coldwater over New Bremen in a pretty good football game. Central Ohio, we had an upset. The perceived dominant team in Central Ohio, Pick Central, goes down to Pickerington North. North's defense looks like it is legit, and they will play Olentangy Orange this week. Hilliard Darby stays undefeated. And Garen Stokes at Dublin Kaufman, which I've never heard of this, ever. I want somebody to send me a Facebook message if you've ever heard of this happening ever before in any football game, junior high or ever.
It is an unusual stat. Take it.
Garen Stokes and Dublin Kaufman won a football game in which they gave up 3 kickoff returns for touchdowns. 3. I thought it was 2. And then our Aaron Blankenship filed the story, and he wrote 3, and I called him. I said, it's 2, isn't it? He goes, no, it's 3. So there you go. Minster people are probably scratching their heads over that. I don't know. I assume Garen Stokes can coach special teams. They'll be working on that this week at Kaufman, but they did get their first win over an unbeaten Dublin Jerome team.
I could just hear him saying afterwards, hey, I'm not going to be bothered by the details as long as we learn something out of this and we go forward better than what we were tonight. But that's a detail that's pretty important. If you give up not 1, but 2 or 3 kickoff returns for touchdowns, that's a detail that's hard to overlook.
That's more than I've seen this year. I've seen 2. I saw one Friday night by Gavin Bloor of Troy Christian. We saw one at Fort Fry and St. Henry. I've not seen 3, so obviously I haven't seen Kaufman play. We are presented by our friends at visitcanton.com. They are the title sponsors, the presenting sponsor, rather, of the Press Pros Magazine Monday Huddle, which will be moving to Tuesday next week and in ensuing weeks. And we will tell you why a little bit later on in the show. But we appreciate our partnership with visitcanton.com. And you know what? You guys should appreciate it, too, because a lot of you are going to be making your way to State Football Championship weekend in Canton on December 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And visitcanton.com is a site where you can go to get all your hotel insights, all your dining insights, all your entertainment options. And there are many of them in Stark County. Sonny and I are big supporters of the State Football Championships being at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium, not just the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, but a lot of other cool places, Hartville Hardware, Lehman's Hardware, a lot of neat places in Canton. And Sonny, you are in agreement with me on that Canton is a great host site.
No question about it. And, I've talked about that, I've written about this, and people ask me all the time when the championships were in Columbus, they were just, it was just, there was just no excitement about it to put 5,000 people in that stadium, nor does the city of Columbus particularly embrace it, appreciate it. It is third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh fiddle to the Blue Jackets, to the Buckeyes, to anything else that's going on in Columbus. But in Stark County, it is front page news every day. It's right there in the repository, or isn't that the Canton newspaper? That every day is featured front page photos and stories and everything like that. They bend over backwards. And I mean, the restaurants there is what you really appreciate. We always talk about going to benders, but when you go there and they know that you're a state football tournament fan from out of town, that town turns itself inside out for people. And it's just big enough to be able to handle the spotlight of that, but it's also small enough to realize that these are just, these are people from Auglaize and Mercer and Dark and Miami counties and places like that, and they appreciate that hometown touch.
No doubt, and one of the teams that we expect to be there, because I know this team expects to be there, the Coldwater Cavaliers. You saw them on Friday night against New Bremen. They stay undefeated. Tell us what you saw on Friday in Chicago.
Well, as much as I was impressed with Coldwater, and you have to be. It's just, that's a team that dresses 80 to 90 kids every year.
Yep.
They've got 100 and I think he told me 150 boys in their high school, and yet they dress 80 or 90 every year, and they graduate. Of course, you do the math, they're going to graduate 20 to 25, and there's no such thing as a rebuild there. It's just kind of a retool, and that part of it is amazing. How they have the skill players, the quarterback, the running backs, and the kids that are constantly in the toolbox there. He just reaches in and grabs a different nut and puts on a bolt, and on they go. But I will say this, as much as I'm impressed with Coldwater, I was equally impressed with New Bremen, because that's a team that doesn't have 90 boys. They dress about 60. They graduated a big senior class from their Division VII championship team last year, which you and I saw, and they graduated, I think, 16 seniors, including the quarterback, running back, linebacker, some significant players, wide receiver Dan Holman, and Mitchell Hayes, the quarterback. And they dipped down this year, and Chris Schmidt has done a great job of development there, because they had the players ready to step in right now, with Hunter Schaefer at running back and David Holman at quarterback, who's just a junior, carried it for 25 times and 140 yards and a touchdown the other night, and really gave them a chance. Had it not been for an unfortunate fumble and turnover, I think, in the first half, a couple of bad penalties, just a couple of breaks that are part of football, that game could have been a one-score game or less at the end. And I think New Bremen gave themselves a real chance to be competitive throughout the rest of the year. Both those teams now are going to go forward, and I think make a statement in their respective divisions. Coldwater, of course, is 6. New Bremen is 7. Coldwater is 4-0. New Bremen is 3-1. Have Anna at home this week, which is a game that we'll feature on Press Pros. We're going to cover that game. And I think New Bremen is for real, and I think that program goes forward because they have the cycle now working for them. And with that, I mean the athletes, have ascended on New Bremen High School right now, and in sports and all sorts of sports.
Well, and when you say Coldwater 6 and New Bremen 7, you're talking about their divisions. New Bremen, pardon me?
Yeah, they're Division 7, respective divisions.
And indeed, New Bremen is 6 in the Division 7 poll. Came out today, the first poll of the year. No surprise at the top of the D7 poll. It is unbeaten Marion Local. Newark Catholic is 2. Hopewell Loudon 3. Lucas, Norwalk, St. Paul. And then New Bremen, Springfield Catholic Central comes in at 10. Tri-Village gets 13 votes, but they're a ways away from being ranked, as SCC with 37 points takes the 10 spot. Coldwater, no surprise, is number 1 in Division 6. They got 15 of the 18 first place votes. Number 2 is Archbold, actually 15 of the 20. Coldwater got 15 votes. Archbold has 3. They're number 2. Fort Fry, a team we saw beat St. Henry, but St. Henry was the better team that day, or should have been. Fort Fry gets 1 first place vote there. 3rd, Mechanicsburg comes in at 4th in that poll. Mogador is 5th. West Jefferson is 8th. Arcanum gets 20 votes. Anna gets 16 votes. So they're in the others receiving votes in the Division 6 poll. Let's hop up to Division 2. and see where the Piqua Indians might stand. They are not in the top 5, but they are 10th at 3-0. They get 37 points in the poll ahead of Massillon, Washington, which is among the others receiving votes. So congratulations to Bill Neese and the Piqua Indians. We see Bell Fountain in Division 3 is number 9. Looking down through Division 4, no local teams ranked there, although Graham is on the cusp. They are first among the others receiving votes, so they'd be 11th. And into Division 5, no surprise, Tiger Laverty's Kirtland squad, a perennial state championship team. They've had some great games over the years with teams from the MAC. Kirtland is number 1. Ironton is number 3. And you page on down and look at the others receiving votes, and there they are, the Versailles Tigers with 21 points, a ways away from being ranked, but Versailles is a very good football team, Sonny.
You know, I've said for years that that football is one of those things where the rich seem to get richer, but now there's redistribution of the income for sure, because there are more teams joining the rich ones. When you consider the ascension of Milton Union, when you consider what New Bremen, we just talked about them, and you look at other programs across the state, that whether it's the cycle of athletes or a dynamic young coach like a Spencer Wells or a Ryan Jones or somebody that comes in and grabs that and captures the imagination and the just the will of kids who are willing to commit, willing to work hard, be good teammates, and just see what they can achieve on Friday night. The only way you find out is go out and play. And I said this back in August when I wrote that story about the compelling teams across this particular area in West Central Ohio, that this would be a burgeoning year. And I don't mean just because the fact that there's 16 teams in the regions. There are legitimately more good teams in this area than there have been for a decade that are going to join the dance come the first week of November when the playoffs start. I don't know what that 16-team region is really going to look like. We've talked about there are going to be some ugly outcomes in the first couple of weeks, but I know there's also going to be a lot more good teams this year in that, even if it was an 8-team region, than there have ever been before.
In Division 1, we have a couple of the teams that we cover very regularly in the Ohio Capital Conference in our Columbus coverage. Led by Hilliard Darby, which has ridden all season long the running and throwing and leadership talents of Blake Horvath. Yes. Darby is undefeated. They won a tight one with Davidson on Friday night, so they've won the Battle of Hilliard. They've already beaten Bradley. They've already beaten Davidson. They are 6th in the state in D1. Gabe Powers in Marysville, the 5-star Ohio State commit, right behind at 7th in the poll. Upper Arlington with Carson Greasock, tailback, and they got their wide receiver back this week. Arlington is number 9. Pick Central comes in at 11. Pick North is 12, even though Pick North won the Battle of Pickerington this past Friday night with 1 defensive touchdown in a low-scoring game. So we will continue. We will cover Gahanna and Hilliard Darby this week, still determining our other Central Ohio game. But speaking of Central Ohio, Mr. Folks, there was another little football affair on Saturday in Columbus, Ohio. You had some phenomenal photography from that one. And one of the lead photos was, of course, of a very disappointed, was it Big Nut? Is that the guy?
Big Nut, yeah.
Big Nut. And our next guest is not a big nut, but he is the big man on the Ohio State beat for us. He is none other than Mark Snyder, who joins us now. And Mark covered the Buckeyes on Saturday. And Mark, they allowed Oregon to play from ahead in that one. And I don't think they ever really brought to bear on the Ducks the pressure that Ohio State typically applies to an opponent having to play in Ohio Stadium.
I don't think people realize that they've had to rebuild a mediocre defense. I mean, they don't have Jonathan Cooper and Tommy Togiai, and those guys were relentless. The strength of last year's defense was the front 7. You had some pretty good linebackers, maybe a really good one in Pete Werner. But that defensive front was relentless, even though it did not get sacks. And now wow, I can't remember the last time they've been so weak up front.
Yeah, Oregon averaged 7.1 yards per carry
in
that game and ran the same play to score 3 different touchdowns. And I don't think they touched the guy on the play anytime.
Bruce, Zach Harrison got burned twice on those two 14-yard touchdown runs by Verdell, and he just got suckered on him. I mean, it wasn't like he got blocked down all that much. And again, the defensive line, these guys look like they are leftovers. And you've seen that. I mean, they don't look like they don't have much athleticism. Harrison does, but and then the linebackers are just. I know it's like almost a crime to talk about linebackers nowadays, like RBIs in baseball. But Ohio State's linebackers this year, I mean, they're talking about possibly making changes, and Dallas Gant waited a long time to play, and so did Taraja Mitchell, but they're not showing much of anything. And I don't know if it gets better. They'll look better because the schedule's so full. It's like cake. The only real ball games they might have left are Penn State and Michigan, so we won't know. But what happened Saturday is nothing new. They lost to Oklahoma in 2017. USC in 2009, Texas in 2005. And I wasn't surprised. I said, if it got to be 21-7, it's going to be really hard for them to win the ball game.
I've been asked, I don't know, a dozen times today, because you and I covered that game on Saturday, and I was on the sideline for much of the game. You were up in the box, and people said, well, what did you see? And the thing that I tell people was I just saw humanity. I saw young kids out there that in the spotlight of that magnitude for maybe the first time. They've never played in front of 100,000 people. They've never played a team as good as Oregon. That's not ABC high school anymore. And here's kids, and there was a picture that in our feature today of the defensive coordinator, Kerry Combs, with his hands on his knees, and one of the secondary players is looking at him kind of going like, what do I do? Just a communication issue, a confidence issue, an instinct issue. None of those things were very apparent on Saturday. And you really got a feel of that from the sideline or the back of the end zone, that there were kids out there that may have been just a little bit in over their head against a team like Oregon in an opening day setting like Ohio Stadium.
Oh, yeah. Coombs is getting like charbroiled, but, he didn't recruit for 2 years when he was with the Titans, and he doesn't have much talent there. I just don't, the defensive backs, that's a different story. These are all 4- and 5-star guys, and there's no problem. I don't have any problem with the way the defensive backfield's playing right now. It's just the front seven is so weak, and there's been turnover. They lost their 5 top tacklers from last year. And, Ohio State's not like Alabama and Georgia and Clemson and Oklahoma and people like that, where they just reload and all that. A Big Ten team once in a blue moon, and really Ohio State team once in a blue moon, can challenge for the national championship. It's not like Alabama or Georgia or all those folks I mentioned that really could think about doing it every other year. And I just think people are expecting too much out of these guys. Again, I think Ryan Day called a bad game on Saturday. He was going downfield 30, 40 yards. He gave up on the running game early. That's a fact. And the offensive line, you kind of wonder, did they kind of overplay their hand by what amounts to having 5 offensive tackles on the field just to get DeJuan Jones in the game? And he had 2 false starts. And I just don't know. I never thought this team was number 3 in the nation, except for the fact that college football is so watered down. Yeah. That's why they want to expand the playoffs, because it's always the same 4 to 6 teams. So who knows? But they've got a chance to build as the season goes along. Will they get better? They have to. They better, because it was pretty sad Saturday, even though it was a 7-point game. And I think Oregon's going to lose some ball games. I don't think they're all that great. They played great Saturday.
Well, I have a couple observations, one about the defense, one about the offense. I think your point about the offensive line is well taken. I think an offensive line has to play as a unit as opposed to just being the 5 biggest, individually best guys. I don't think they have the cohesion up there that they would love to have. Also offensively, I think Ohio State has gotten so spoiled by its success under Urban and Ryan Day and its custom of scoring whatever it wants to score, 45, 50, that when they get in a game where they score 7.5, I think they feel like there's something more wrong than there is wrong. Like, they were not out of that game in the first half Saturday. There was no reason to go for it on 4th down rather than kick a field goal. There's no reason in the second half not to, punt the ball, play defense. They get in a tight game. They are not comfortable playing in the 20s. They just are not, because they feel like we're not scoring 50. What's wrong with us? Well, you're in a football game. And Jim Tressel was a master at winning those games. 26-23, 21-16. A Tressel blowout was a game where you'd be down 2 scores and there'd only be time for you to get the ball once. Like, you couldn't win because he just had you. And I don't think Urban was comfortable playing in those games, and I don't think Ryan Day is comfortable playing in those games. And, yeah, they'll win the next 4 easy: Tulsa, Akron, Rutgers, Maryland. But then they get into, they got to play at Indiana. They got to play Penn State at home. They got to play at Michigan. They're probably going to have to play Iowa. And then they're going to have to play, like you said, Mark, we know who the playoff teams are going to be. It's going to be Clemson, Oklahoma, Alabama, Georgia. It's going to be 3 of those 4, or maybe all 4 of those if they even get in, if Ohio State even gets in. But they just, I think they feel like, what's wrong? We're not scoring. Well, punt the ball. Kick a field goal.
I thought Ryan Day was a little bit arrogant going for it on 4th down twice. Either that or he does not trust Noah Ruggles, the place kicker. I don't know what's so bad about pinning Oregon with a punt and being patient. And I thought there was a great lack of patience and maybe a little bit of arrogance. Like, we're just going to fix this by throwing to Olave downfield and getting a quick 6. And, Day's done a lot of nice things here. But he definitely he got out schemed and out coached and didn't show much patience at all. So
I think you made a very good point a moment ago, Mark, when you talked about expectations. The expectations of this football team going into the season were way, way too high. And of course, that's endemic with Ohio State football. It's been that way since 1951 and even before, back in the days of Paul Brown. You talk about arrogance. The people here automatically believe if you wear scarlet and gray, you're already 3 points in the polls better than anybody else just for the colors you wear. And, the problem is, it's like Bruce said, there's an expectation of scoring at will. And when it doesn't go your way, you kind of get off it upsets the apple cart. And I can tell you this, and I wrote about this in my column today, when I was walking out of the ballpark on Saturday, I mean, people were jumping off the wagon in droves, assuming that, now we got to win the rest of them. And I don't know if we can win the rest of them because of the way we played today. These are young kids. Having played, and we've all played at some level of sports, and you got to understand the process. If you're 18, 19, 20 years old, maturity comes in different shapes and different forms and different speeds. These kids are going to get better. And I do really believe what I said to you a moment ago. There are kids out there for the first time that saw the elephant on Saturday. And the talent, as you said, in the secondary is unquestionably there. They've got professional coaches. I don't care what they say about Kerry Combs. He's been around the block. They're going to get better. It's just how soon.
Yeah, I agree that they will be better. But, even if they run the table, do you really want this team to be in the CFP playing against a Georgia or somebody like that? Do you really want that? I mean, wouldn't it be better to go to the Outback Bowl or something like that? And, you can't do it every year. Nick Saban could do it every year, and Sweeney could do it every year because, especially Sweeney, because the ACC is even weaker than the Big Ten. But they will get better. Travion Henderson might be the next J.K. Dobbins, but man, oh man, just be patient. Give your big offensive line a chance. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a 12-play drive.
No,
that's for sure.
I disagree with you guys a little bit in that I don't think playoff aspirations for this team are unfair because of the level of recruiting. because of the number of snaps those kids get in blowouts the previous year. Now, last year was a little bit different with COVID and they had games canceled. And because when you look at the other teams that are playoff contenders, Clemson's playing without Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne. Alabama's playing without Mac Jones and Devontae Smith and Najee Harris. So if they can rebuild, why can't Ohio State? Ohio State's got an in-state recruiting monopoly. They've got a league they can dominate. They've got a great coach. I do think, though, that to expect to win the same way that you've won before with new players, I don't think it's practical to think that a team of as many new guys as Ohio State has can go out there and score 50 every week. I think you've got to figure out how to win the game in a more of a manageable way. So I think the game was there to be won Saturday. I just think they got too greedy.
There's no question.
To your point about the recruiting, though, that recruiting expectation and all that hype is what somebody else says about you. The reality that they face now is what these players are saying about themselves in the face of a national opponent like Oregon in front of 100,000 people where you've never been there before. It's different when you're having to live up to the expectation and the hype that somebody heaped on you that may be unfair when you're 18 years old. I've always said this, and you and I have had this conversation. We've all had this conversation. How can you look at an 18-year-old kid and know what he's going to be like when he's 21? That's very unfair. Now, the expectations, if you're going to Ohio State or Alabama, someplace like that, buck up, baby. You better be ready for it when you get there. But it's different from what Tom Lemming says about you and what you say about yourself on Saturdays.
I think they failed recruiting linemen and linebackers. I don't see any 4- and 5-star people, and I think they're top heavy when it comes to ends, but I don't see any tackles other than Haskell Garrett that are gonna fill gaps and just take away the middle on you. And I think their recruiting looks like to be imbalanced. They've gone heavy on DBs, receivers, and offensive line. And obviously their quarterbacks are all blue chip and everything like that. But I think they've neglected the front seven. I just don't see the talent here. I just don't.
I think they get the guys they want. So I push back a little bit on the recruiting thing. And I know that guys, usually in recruiting, you hit on half, you miss on half. That's just,
right.
That's just kind of the hit rate. But I mean, you give Ryan Day a roster to pick on Saturday, he's picking his. He's not picking Oregon's. I mean, he's not picking a roster full of 3-star guys. He's picking the roster he's got because those are the guys he wants. They don't settle on very many guys. They fill their recruiting class a year ahead of time. Yeah. They select. They don't recruit. So I don't give them a pass on, well, these guys are young. Hey, they're the guys they wanted, and they got them, and everybody else in the country wanted them too. But I just think that we tend to overreact to every loss, but it is a very difficult road to the playoff when you've lost to a team at your place that now has, use a hockey term here, a game in hand on you.
Yeah.
This happened in 2017 with Oklahoma. You didn't think Oklahoma was good enough to go undefeated the rest of the year, and they weren't. But they lost early enough that in a comparison to Ohio State, you said, well, you can't pick Ohio State over Oklahoma. Oklahoma beat them in Columbus. And similarly, Oregon now, unless they lose like in a Pac-12 championship game, Oregon's going to win that conversation with Ohio State every single time because they beat Ohio State in Columbus without Kayvon Thibodeau, without their best player.
Yeah, no, there's no question about that. I think Oregon is going to win that division. They're North Division, and now, boy, I'll tell you what, USC is really bad. And Stanford, I can't figure out Stanford. I've seen them a couple of times, but Oregon every day of the week, and Oklahoma every day of the week. So you might be, you got to cross your fingers, win them all, and cross your fingers that somebody's going to lose, and that usually does happen, but. Then it comes to how pretty your victories are too.
So Mark, tomorrow,
I personally think there've been a lot. Before we get away here tonight, I think there've been a lot of unfair criticism of C.J. Stroud so far, and I wanted to ask both of your guys to comment about this. I look at a kid that you ask him to go out there and try to save your bacon on Saturday, throw it 54 times, 485 yards, 3 touchdowns, and just the 1 interception. Again, a redshirt freshman steps in at Minnesota, throws 4 touchdowns in the second half. I don't know how much more you can ask of him, and yet everybody says, I'm not really impressed. I you guys need to comment about that because I have been very impressed with him.
Oh, no question. They dumbed it down for him in the first half against Minnesota, and everybody's going, palms up. What's going on with it? What's going on? And
right.
they were letting him get his feet wet or get him down. It's a bad cliche, sorry. But I think he's been wonderful. And with what he's had, he threw 54 times. In that last interception, he was running for his life, and I had my field glasses on. People were not getting open downfield.
Oh,
they were not. And
I agree with you. I think he's done fine, and I will be surprised tomorrow, Mark, when you attend the Ryan Day press luncheon. I think tomorrow Ryan Day will shock me, and I think it'll be a wrong move if he does not come out tomorrow and strongly support CJ Stroud as his starting quarterback and say, look, we are not looking at replacing CJ Stroud as our quarterback because, the Quinn Ewers stuff is going to be out there. You always want the guy you don't have. The backup quarterback's everybody's favorite player because you've never seen him fail.
Yep.
But Ryan Day being a quarterback guy, and, look, he got out-coached Saturday. He did, and Kerry Combs did. He panicked. He'll learn from it. He's a very smart coach, very good coach.
He is.
But it will be a mistake by him if he entertains anything tomorrow that damages C.J. Stroud's confidence. I don't expect that at all. I will be very surprised if that happens.
Well, as an athlete thing, and I look out there and I see Stroud is a kid that's very confident in his own abilities. He's not afraid to fail. He wants to be in that role. It's very obvious. The body language, just the way he makes some. Yeah, he missed some throws. Drew Brees misses some throws, but there's no question that he believes he's the guy for that job, and he wants to be there. And he wants that pressure. He wants that responsibility. And the last thing in the world you want is somebody out there that you think, I think he's good enough to be there. He knows he's good enough to be there. And that's the most important thing you can ask of a quarterback that's played 2 games in college football.
What I like about Stroud is he is so calm in the pocket. He has been unaware of the rush exactly once in 2 games. And when all hell's breaking loose, he's very calm. He's got a big arm. There's nothing wrong with him. And Day won't do this, but if you bench him or he gets more criticism, what's that say? Look at the numbers he's putting up. And yeah, he's got all kind of skill people. There's no question about it. But I like his makeup. I really do. I think he's right now, he's on his way to being better than Dwayne Haskins. And that's not saying much, but I always thought Haskins was a system guy. But I like Stroud. I really do. And it's pretty obvious he played a little banged up. The only difference I see is if you had somebody with the kind of legs that Fields had in Stroud, where he could just torment a defense when it's like 3rd and 7 and you run for 10 and you run out of bounds and they don't get you. That kills defenses.
Yep. And
now there's no extra threat of a guy running out of the backfield now. It's just one running back. And I think they got to find out if this guy can paralyze a defense by doing a quarterback draw or something, or just intentionally bailing out of the pocket and getting big yards. And then that's something else to game plan, and I don't see it. And that's what I did not like about Haskins. He could not paralyze a defense with those 10, 12-yard runs that he had no business gaining because the play was beat. But you got to make something out of it. Barrett was great at it, Fields obviously, and now Stroud's got to prove he could do the same thing.
Well, Mark will be on the Ryan Day press conference tomorrow. He'll be writing about it for PressProsMagazine.com. He covers the Buckeyes home and road, and we appreciate your time tonight, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
So, Mr. Folks, we've hit on some high school football. Anything else you want to bring up before you get to our Reader Speaks column tonight?
I just think it's, going back to that Stroud kid who's playing quarterback over there, you have to have been competitive at some point in your life to understand the feeling. And I felt that the other day, and it's been 50 years since I threw a pitch in anger at anybody. But, when you go out there, that you get that sense of just chills, goosebumps up your back when there's 100,000 people and you put yourself in a young player, a freshman's shoes like that, going out there and performing in that atmosphere with that kind of expectation and pressure on you. I don't think there's any of those 100,474 people sitting up here the other day had any idea of what was going on under center on Saturday.
Yeah, I think he'll be fine. And I mean, Ryan Day was a quarterback. He has coached a lot of quarterbacks. I think he will support CJ Stroud tomorrow. And whatever he says, we'll have it for you on PressProsMagazine.com. We are presented by VisitCanton.com. They are our partners in helping you prepare for a trip to the state football finals. State championship weekend is December 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and 5th, actually, because we have one game on Thursday night, 2 games Friday, 2 games Saturday, 2 games Sunday. Go to visitcanton.com to find out what is going on in Stark County that weekend. Join their mailing list, request information. If you want to go up and do a scouting report, they have a lot of great events around Halloween with pumpkin picking time, and the Mays Valley Winery and Craft Brewery is a place that you could put on your agenda. So visitcanton.com is the place to go. They'll get you all set for a great trip to Stark County. And I'd get my hotel reservations right now because there are a lot of hotels around Pro Football Hall of Fame, site of Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium, where the title games will be played, and a lot of great restaurants as well. Never too early to get reservations for state championship weekend, and we will see you there. And we're looking for a good live venue up there, Sonny, because we did a show last year on Sunday morning of the Coldwater state championship game, and we're looking forward to doing some live shows up there. Maybe after each game that one of our PressProsMagazine.com teams plays in.
Just got a text here. You mentioned about Reader Speaks. Got a text here from Jack in Springfield that said, based on your comments, my comments a moment ago about more good teams this year than any in the last decade, are you ready to rethink the 16-team region? I think you're talking two different things here, Jack. No, I'm not ready to rethink the 16-team region because I just say I don't know what it's like around the rest of the state of Ohio. I'm just saying here this year there's more good teams that have joined the party than what we've had in the last decade. But I still think 16 teams in the region is too many, and I think it's going to lead to too many bad or embarrassing outcomes in the first 2 rounds. Bruce?
Yeah, and here's the other thing. I think it's unfair to the really good teams in the region. I don't think you should make them play another game. And you say, well, they're going to play the 16th seeded team. Okay, they are. But anytime you step on a football field, you can get hurt. Anytime. And for a team like in Central Ohio, like Hilliard Darby, if Blake Horvath, their quarterback, gets hurt in a game against a 16 seed, that's a game that Darby earned the right not to have to play to get into the next round of the playoffs. A number 16 team is not going to beat a number 1 team. And I would say that a number 8 seed is not going to end up coming out of a region either. So 8 is enough teams to play because 8's going to play 1. If 8 wants to come out of the region, then beat 1 in the first week. But 8 shouldn't get to play 1 in week 2 after 16 hurts the quarterback on seed number 1 in week 1. So we talk about the teams that are down at the bottom of those rankings and they're going to get blown out or whatever, but they're happy they're in the playoffs. I think a 16-team region is very unfair to the top 2 or 3 or 4 teams in that region because that's why you play the regular season, not to have to deal with that extra game in the playoffs.
Yeah, and the coaches of those top teams really don't want 16 teams. Now, there's not a lot of them that are going to admit it, and they're not going to say it's Doug Ute. But to privately, when you get them aside, they want to play good competition from the get-go. And to your point, if they have to play and they've got to risk somebody, they want it to be a meaningful game. They want it to be something besides playing the number 16 team that has no chance of beating you in all likelihood, and yet you get the freakish thing that happens that comes out that really hurts you down the line. Now, it may have hurt you in a game against a better opponent anyway, but at least you don't have that feeling, and you know what I'm talking about, that sinking feeling like we didn't need to be out there in the first place playing that team in that game at this particular time.
And I also think it turns Division 7 almost into a battle of attrition. Like, I'm looking at Troy Christian Friday night against Covington, and Troy Christian is a really nice Division 7 football team.
Solid team.
They're going to play in the playoffs, I have no doubt, and they would be a top 8 team in their region. But you make Troy Christian play another week, and if they get a Landon Rich hurt because he's playing another game, they're done. You know, similarly, you get a Dan Homan hurt, you get a Carson Bay hurt, you get one of those Versailles tailbacks hurt. That's, to me, why a 16-team region is excessive. And we've been consistent in that. I know a lot of people are trying to move us off our spot on that. I'm not going to change my mind because I just think that it's not fair. Yeah, there aren't very many Division 6 teams like Coldwater that have 85 kids. You know, you got a team like Troy's got 30, 35 kids on that team, and a lot of them are just too young to play right now. So they got guys playing both ways. If they get their quarterback, Burkett, hurt, he's a linebacker too, an all-state linebacker, they get him hurt, it's over. And I just don't think you want to make those guys play that extra game.
Melanie wrote to us this week, and she is here in Miami County, and she said, you guys rarely ever talk about volleyball. We've got great volleyball in the area. Why don't you guys talk more about volleyball and the fact that New Bremen has won 2 titles in the last 4 years? And she said, I think it's an interesting. I love the sport. I wish you guys would cover it more. Melanie, to your point, I agree. But you know, right now it's a little bit early, you know, to be getting.
Melanie, who else covers more volleyball than Press Pros?
Well, and who else does it more than us? But to your point about being as committed to it as what we've obviously have been to football the last 4 weeks, volleyball is going to shake itself out in about 2 more weeks. That's when it really begins to get good. When you get about 8 to 10 matches under New Bremen's belt and under Coldwater's belt and under Tip City's belt and under Troy's belt, all these teams that I know you're referring to, that's when you really want to be able to start to pay attention and to look at that the sectional and district rounds of the tournament. That's volleyball at its very best. Right now, you got a lot of people feeling their way through their rotations and who can play and it's about to get good, to answer your question, in about 2 more weeks, and you'll see more volleyball starting actually this week on Press Pros.
We will have Diana Kramer of New Bremen on the show.
Nikki Etzler, Coldwater, excellent guest.
Yeah, we will have volleyball coaches on the show, and Press Pros has been all over volleyball and will continue to be all over volleyball, including the state finals. We did a story last year, featured Bobby Hoying's daughter, Ava Hoying. We're going to do a story on Tom Brandewee's daughter, who's one of the top players in Central Ohio. Tommy, of course, played at Fort Loramie and played for Ohio State. So we're not ignoring volleyball, but football is, at this point in time, is a game that is occupying most of our attention. We got a good question here on Facebook from Brad Fox. Brad says, how did the Buckeyes get to the point of having no upperclassmen QBs? Not that it is a bad thing, but now they have 4 freshman QBs. Actually, Brad, it is a bad thing. It's a very bad thing. And the reason they have 4 freshman QBs, number one, is because Quinn Ewers didn't wait to come to school because he couldn't wait to get paid. He wanted to get paid, and he signed deals in excess of $1 million. I don't blame him, but that explains why he skipped his final year of high school. They chose to redshirt Jack Miller and C.J. Stroud. They didn't have to do that, but they did. So those guys stayed in the same class. And Kyle McCord came in, and, Kyle McCord is a gray shirt, so he came in January. So he's playing his first year, but he's been here longer than Ewers, not as long as Stroud and Miller. Why don't they have any upperclassmen quarterbacks? Because one of them's the backup for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And one of them's going to be the starter for the Chicago Bears.
Chicago Bears, yeah. You don't have senior quarterbacks anymore. If you're good, you're eligible for the NFL draft after your junior season, and they're going to take that money and run. So it's not the same game that it was certainly 20 years ago. You will never have another Rex Kern at Ohio State or people with that generation that when I went through college and that type of football, Archie Manning and that whole generation of quarterbacks that played first of all, they didn't play as freshmen. They played as sophomore, junior, and senior, and then went on to the NFL. And the schedule has been accelerated now, and it just isn't that way anymore. That's why they have 4 freshman quarterbacks, and that's why probably 2 of them are going to leave at some point in every program, not just Ohio State, because you don't have very much time to make your case about playing at the next level. And so those 2 of those guys at just about every school is going to be looking out at the portal and saying, hey, where do I have a better chance to play immediately and make an impression?
I'll make a prediction for you here, Brad. How many Ohio State quarterbacks on the roster right now will complete their eligibility at Ohio State? That answer is 0.
Zippo.
How many of these 4 quarterbacks at Ohio State, now by complete their eligibility, I mean use up every year in college they have? None of them. How many of them will finish their career playing their last game in an Ohio State uniform? 1. I don't know which one, but it'll be 1. And the one that it is will chase the other 3 away, because we're in an era now of immediate transfer eligibility once. And if CJ Stroud is not the starter at Ohio State next year, he'll be playing somewhere else. And Kyle McCord's not going to sit around and watch CJ Stroud or Quinn Ewers play quarterback next year. And Quinn Ewers sure isn't going to sit around and watch CJ Stroud play quarterback next year, because if he is, he's going to assume CJ Stroud will be playing quarterback in 2023. And he don't want to sit there and watch that. So this is my argument for recruiting a really good, but not 5-star Ohio high school quarterback every other year. The kid at Penn State, Sean Clifford, he's not as good as the quarterbacks Ohio State has, but he would come to Ohio State and he wouldn't transfer. They probably could get a quarterback from Hoban or Menor or somewhere and keep that kid because he's happy being a Buckeye. These guys look at Ohio State as a way station to the NFL when they come in from Arizona, Jack Miller, California, CJ Stroud, Pennsylvania, Kyle McCord, and Texas, Quinn Ewers. When you get away from recruiting Ohio kids, and they have, you cannot play the I grew up wanting to be a Buckeye card. Some of them say it, but they don't really mean it. They grow up wanting to be NFL players, and if they don't see that as a realistic reality for them, bye-bye. I've rendered Sonny Folks speechless.
No more questions. I don't have another text, and I don't have another relevant question.
We have one more here. One more. You probably know who this is. Say Coach Elk says you guys do a great job covering volleyball.
Yeah, but I just think, and I appreciate that, but volleyball is one of those sports where there is a certain sifting out period in that first month of the season. And the reason I don't know that much about volleyball, but those aren't my words. I've had more than one coach. When you talk to them, it is a process to get through that first 8-10 matches, and then you really start putting your rotation together, and you find out, which kids are the kids that you're going to rely on through the rest of the regular season and into the playoffs. So again, here in the next couple of weeks is the point where the MAC, which is an ultra competitive conference, the Shelby County League, which is an ultra competitive conference. When you talk about Rushi and Jackson Center and Fort Laramie, those teams are all going to hit their stride, and it's going to be dog eat dog. And once again this year, it's when the polls come out, I would expect at least 6 or 7 of the top 10 teams in Division IV in Ohio to all be within 25 miles of each other, right where we're sitting tonight. I'm sitting tonight.
Okay, so for the weekend, our high school football games that we'll be covering include we're covering New Bremen, Anna at New Bremen.
Anna at New Bremen.
Are we covering Piqua Sydney?
Piqua Sydney is on our list. Milton Union at
Troy Christian.
Troy Christian's on our list, of local games here this weekend. And
Central Ohio, we have Gahanna at Darby, and we are still selecting our next game in Central Ohio.
Player to be named later.
Yeah, game to be named later. Also, of course, Ohio State coverage all week long. Volleyball coverage coming up. Sonny is
tomorrow night
covering volleyball. We'll have fresh volleyball on the site. We'll have our picks column up on Friday. Sonny, your picks column is sponsored by?
Picks column is Nidec Minster, as we like to say, where opportunity and skills come together to make a great relationship. They're always looking for good people, and we're happy to have them as sponsors of the Friday Night Picks. By the way, the Friday Night Picks is growing in readership. I think last week we had 151,000 hits on that page. So we appreciate your support of that, and the number of people write to us and say it's entertaining. We like to find out more about the teams, not just the score, but find out more about the teams and your opinions about who wins and why. So we're glad to do it. We've done it for 12 years. No reason to stop now.
Nope. And the Central Ohio picks go up Thursday night as well. The Central Ohio picks and all of our Central Ohio coverage is gaining traction, and we appreciate that very much. If you'd like to be a
press, we're on a hot streak. We were 9 of 10 here in West Central Ohio over the weekend, and now stand 34 of 40 picks correct on the season through the first 4 weeks.
The Central Ohio record is not that good, I will confess.
I give you a pass. I've done it for a long time.
I did finally get Hilliard Derby right, so there we go. That's good. The Derby Panthers, I'm 1-3 with them this year, but I've learned my lesson. All right, Mr. Folks, with that, we will bid everyone adieu. We want to thank everybody who watches the show live, who watches it on the replay. Debbie beat me to it. She says, great job tonight.
Good night, Truman.
Good night, Truman. Debbie, somebody like you who watches the show all the time, it's not good night, Truman. It's Truman, go to bed.
From Albany, Georgia.
Come on, Debbie. Next week, we'll get that right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
All right.